Oh, let me see. 1943, I was called into service. I got my, to be basic training, I guess you would call it. And they sent me to Daytona Beach in a wonderful, beautiful hotel. They put bunk beds in the hotel rooms. And it was not long before I arrived that they decided that I should go to officer candidate school. I have a degree in college degree plus a little more. And so I guess they figured I'd be pretty useful. So they sent me to Des Moines, Iowa, to officer candidate school there. And I went through, I guess it was 6 weeks of whatever. Again, I can't remember too well what happened. All I remember is standing out in the cold, and it was very cold in Iowa. And it was a time of year, in January, I think the end of January that I was there, or February. And what else can I do for you? And I stayed in the service until I was separated in 1946. October, I think, is what it was.
What was your specialty?
My specialty? Well, that was the big problem. My college degree was in psychology, and I don't know what you do in the service with psychology. So anyway, they decided that I would be good as a platoon leader. So they made me a platoon leader in the officer candidate school. So I actually had a platoon in officer candidate school and was considered, I think, an executive officer at the time. And I can name a couple of company officers that I remember. You wish me to go on?
Whatever you want to tell us, ma'am.
Keep going, Mom. It's a great story.
All right. So I can't remember exactly. Well, when I was commissioned, it was the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. And that was April the 22nd, I remember very well, in 1943. And about, I think it was September, I'm not sure. But anyway, 5 months later, we became officially part of the Army and became Women's Army Corps. And so I had my lieutenant's gold bar, very proud and very exciting. Then they decided I think that we were too young to be in officer candidate school teaching, So the next thing I knew, I was taking an exam, or I guess you'd call it that, to determine exactly what I'd be good for. And I ended up with the Signal Corps. They sent me to the Signal Corps. And at that time, by the time I got there, actually, the Japanese code and the German code had been solved, and so they had a wonderful setup for the assignment of Signal Corps solving of codes, and so I really wasn't any use there. So the next problem was, what are they going to do with me again? And so as I say, I was a college graduate in psychology, and I wanted to go into social work. And so I actually spent about a year at the University of North Carolina taking credits to be a social worker, so to speak. And what it amounted to, it was called the personal affairs, and that's what I ended up with in this personal affairs, and I became a go-between between the American Red Cross and the Army, and solving family problems, getting men back if they were needed, deaths of the family or whatever it might have been. And I don't remember now all the problems that I solved, but anyway, I had a group that worked for me, and I was under the captain. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. Somewhere there's a letter from him telling me how good I am, you know. So I ended up with actually going in personal affairs still, and of course by 1946 they were beginning to do a lot of discharging of the personnel who had earned credits in order to get out of the Army now as the war was over. So I was in, let's see, I was in South Post, Fort Myer. That's where I ended up, South Post, Fort Myer. And there were people that were, there's officers and enlisted men that were being discharged had to go through a personal affairs person in order to get information about what they were entitled to, their education, monies, and whatever. And so that's where I ended up. And I got my credits, and then I married in August of 1946. And I think this is a problem in changing my name, because I enlisted under the name, my maiden name, Leeper, L-E-E-P-E-R, Elizabeth Leeper. And when I married, I became a Montgomery. And so there wasn't much time between when I was married in August and when I was separated. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether there's a problem with my my name, because I had two names. Enlistment, I'm beginning my enlistment, and what do you call it when you start your
commission?
Basic training or
basic training, that's it. Thank you. Basic training. And then from there to Fort Des Moines, Iowa, and those were the two posts. And then Washington, D.C. was where I went into the personal affairs business. I really didn't stay anywhere, any place in the Signal Corps, because I was there a very short time. Who was my inspiration? I suppose my father. He was a West Point graduate of 1918, and so, and I was an only child, and he was an only child, and so I suppose if I could have, and if there had been a way, I would have gone as you have, Pearl, be in more in the Army than I was. Well, of course, we were very anxious to help in this war, and so there was much women involved in various opportunities where they, the in the industries that were making arms and the women where they could help. I did, it was a service between the Red Cross and the Army in solving some problems for them.
I couldn't dare take that.
So do you want to flip through it?
Huh?
Do you want to flip through it?
Yeah, I can open it up. I'll let you.
I'll let you guys. How simple the application was back then.
and now everything's like a full life story when you fill out.
For 10 years. My husband died while I was with her, she and her husband. And very briefly, but, and then I went to get in the Signal Corps. I think it was, it's rather, a special thing.
For
that
sure.
You have to.
Well,
But we're going to come eat, aren't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're going to eat.
Yeah.
Should be
As
good.
long as you let us through.
We got you. We got you.